Good afternoon, Wolf here. Today, I'm going to share with you some history. Might be ancient history well, I guess it is kind of by now. But I had a couple messages in the last couple weeks that a couple subscribers looked up at my website, Alaskan Publications, and said, I downloaded a couple of your books, your writings. I liked them. And I had another one that not so much. But that's okay. You know, I just appreciate anyone if you can support me by just looking, viewing, whether it's a like or not. That's how I view things. If it's not a dislike, then if there's a comment, I will see what I can do to make it a positive one. But that's aside. Among the comments was just, when did you start writing? And what is your style of writing? Well, I can't really say for sure. I've never been a real gung-ho book reader. I mean, sure, when I was in school, elementary school, we went to the library every week. And, nice field trip. I think we all feared the librarian more than we did getting into the bus with, we had a wacky bus driver. But anyway, that's a long time ago. During my school years, elementary, junior high, which was 7 through 9, and then high school was 10 through 12. However, I only went to the 10th grade. Oh, I did graduate. I left home when I was 14, so I would have been heading into the 11th grade. But for many, many reasons, I decided to leave. Some in the family said I was running away and I shouldn't have been doing that. Others supported the idea. The only thing my mom said, and this was back in probably around 1971 or 72, I think, she said, "You'll be back." Well, long story short, I was 14, and I did not go back home. Well, to visit, yes, but I did not go back home to live. Now, I had been working down, when I say down, the upper desert down to the LA area, we kind of call that down. But I would visit my grandmother and my aunt every weekend, every summer, vacation, Easter, whenever I could. And as far back as, I think I was 9 or 10, during the summer, I had some sort of jobs. Whether it was mowing the grass for someone or a newspaper route. When I was 12 years old, I had my first restaurant job. It was called Chicken Delight Pizza Man. And it was a real job. I mean, I went every day for 6-7 hours. I coated the chicken, deep fried it, all that good stuff. Made all the prep stuff. And of course, We had pizza then. We made all the dough from scratch, and customer could come in and watch it being tossed. That was not one of my best skills, I'll tell you that. But regardless, I had a job when I was 12. And then in the following summer, I had the exact same job, but they named me the manager. Now I'm 13 years old. I got paid $80 a week to open the restaurant and close it. Now, of course, I wasn't there, the whole day, but I wasn't bound by the rules, unless no one came after me. No one came after my aunt or my grandmother. I just worked. Well, that job lasted a few weeks into the summer and everything, until a week the boss came in, and I was expecting my paycheck. Now, they paid me cash, $88, and they said, no, we're gonna keep it. And I said, well, then I won't be working tomorrow with you. No, you work. They were Asian, so if I say, I'm not trying to make fun of how they reply or responded, but that was the response. You work. And they left me there. Now, of course, I'm one that I've never just walked out of a job. And even then, I stayed till the end of the shift, which was about 9:30, but I took my $88 and I left a note. Now, was that stealing? It could be. But as far as I was concerned, I was entitled to it. And of course, I never went back. But that was okay, because I worked for the Covina, Covina, town where my grandmother lived, Covina Employment Agency. And at first I didn't tell them anything that, I may have stolen money. I did tell them later on. I was about, 15 or so. Oh yes, side note, at 15, a couple months into my 15th year, I did graduate high school. I went to an adult education school, and I had so many credits, abundance of credits, that I was able to finish out high school, except for one class, and that was American Government, which was usually a senior class. I finished that class in 3 days. Was I smart? Maybe. It just was easy. Just came to it. But anyway, that's beside the point. I did go on to work in an Italian restaurant up until I was 17, almost 18. And I got tired of it. My aunt signed for me to go into the military. I was on a delayed enlistment for the U.S. Air Force. And that was supposed to be for a year, until I turned 18. Well, that lasted just a few months, and they called me up and said, we don't have the job you wanted, which would have been either darkroom photography or TV production, television, broadcasting, because those were my interests. I ended up being an air traffic controller. Anyway, that's, how I am. I get on sidetracks. Anyway, I did serve my country. I'm proud of it. And I'm proud to say that I am a veteran of the United States military. And I'm proud of everyone else that has served, has went to, lands of conflict. Some, obviously have not come back, and We honor them, right? Those that are in the service today, I honor you. Salute you. And proud. As well as I'm proud of those that are in Canada who are serving that country. That is also my home as a dual citizen. So thank you for all of you that have served or are serving, and to the families who support you. Anyway, okay, on with the topic. The question, my writing. Well, as I was going to mention, up through, I figured right on into the last year of high school, attending the brick and mortar schools, in this case 10th grade. I did have a TV production class, which I absolutely loved. We had our own channel in Apple Valley, California. I recall, if memory serves, and that is a long time ago, that it broadcasted on a little bit of cable just down in the, we called it the village. Now it may have went a little bit further, I don't really know. Because primarily, everyone where I grew up, which was the Victor Valley, the Mojave Desert, had TV antennas. But, we move on. But that was a semester for that. Then I was put into English composition. That was like putting me in a blind test in the dark, underwater, at the most depth you could figure, because boy, I was lost, confused. All I remember is seeing sentences put on the whiteboard and chalkboard over on one side, and then the teacher breaking it down, drawing lines underneath and up above, and telling me these are parts of a sentence and parts of that sentence. And well, in summary, English was not my best subject, nor was vocabulary. And what else is one other part of you can take, for writing and all. So I did my best to try to avoid taking English 101, for example. Later on, when I got into college, I found that rather than take this dreaded English, I took creative writing. And it was my niche. It's like I could walk that straight line and be very successful. Not that I've had to walk a white line. Okay, so I've been a good boy, always. Well, okay. Anyway, I found that was my niche, and some say that I had the gift always. That's what my aunt called it. My aunt Mildred. I think I mentioned her on another topic, or Aunt Money as she was referred to. She was my mentor. Yeah. Love her to death, even, she's resting in peace these days. But I will always have her right here in my heart. Today, well, we'll go back a bit, but it seems like today I can look at a billboard, a newspaper, a magazine, something on the news, and so I could come up with a story, which I'll show you here in just a few minutes. Well, that story begins in Alaska. in, I believe, 1977. I'll get that. 1977. I was on my first tour, which I volunteered for. Uh, we, the military, called them remote tours. And they were not desirable for most. Well, I looked at it as, well, I just will go volunteer because I know I'm going to get one. I ended up getting 3. But I volunteered, and sure enough, I had orders not too long after that from New York. I was stationed in upstate New York in what was called Hancock Field in Syracuse, New York. And I had orders, some called marching orders, right, to head on to Alaska. So I was off, and I ended up at what was called Murphy Dome Air Force Station. It was just outside of Fairbanks. And then my second tour was at Catalina Air Force Station, not far from McGrath, the closest major airport. And then my third, what was called Tin City, a little bit more up north. And, well, we'll leave that story as it is. Well, 1975, or 77, I'm not sure why I'm thinking 75, but anyway, 1977, the month was July. And I was 3/4 the way through my tour, October to October. And one of my usual haunts, besides playing pool, watching a movie, bowling, racquetball, working out in the gym, darkroom, oh, my favorite, arts and crafts. We had it all. We had it all. And of course, in the summer, of course, we had nature. We could go hiking outside of the base, as long as we had permits and permission, and the things that the military asked you to do, as you definitely don't want to get in trouble. Now, of course, at Murphy Dome, we were able to take trips down to Fairbanks, the city of Fairbanks, and that was a treat. At Catalina, which was about 230, 250 miles northeast of Anchorage, I believe, or near McGrath, it was remote. No highway, no road access. You were flown in by a bush pilot, and he flew out with a bush pilot. And but as I said, I could still go out and you could enjoy nature. And I'll leave that for a couple of those hikes for another story. So, okay, we'll get to the topic here. 1977 in July, I visited the base library quite a bit, and I had quite a few books for given the 600 people that we had stationed. Well, one of my favorite sections was the Westerns, and I read every one of them. I don't know how many there were right off. Of course, I started out with Louis L'Amour. I believe that is correct. Loved his style, everything. And then Zen Grey, read many of his. His were, I found a little more difficult to read. But again, writer style, right? And there were some other ones that I never had heard of and stuff. But anyway, I gained my influence, if you will, from these various Western writers. So about 3 a.m., July 18th, 1977, I had a yellow pad, office paper, and I had a pencil. And I just started writing. And the story, which I'm going to share with you, I'm going to read a couple pages of the opening and stuff, and then I'm going to turn here in just a moment and show you some of the early drawings. Actually, these are the original drawings from 1977. The title page here. In fact, I will bring that up. Let it load while we're waiting there. The book, and in fact, I'll read the back of this here and stuff. And this book was based on my first marriage, of which did last for 34 years. I won't get into any details as to why it ended, but life changes. We just kind of grew apart, if that's the easiest way to say it. But regardless of that, the girl that this book is based on, of course myself, is we were childhood sweethearts. We met in the elementary school, I believe it was 5th grade, and she came up to me and invited me to her sister's birthday party. Now, I can tell you, that was a shock, because I was not popular, I was bullied, made fun of, even by the teachers. I was called dumb. So I just kept to myself, very shy, and to have a girl come up and say, "Would you like to come to my sister's birthday party?" It would be on the following, I think it was a Wednesday. It was a midweek, and of course I was happy. I was shocked. I mean, I think I was 8 or 9 then. So, of course, I rode home. I ride home on the bus every day, and I asked my mom. She said, "Sure, you've got your bike. Just be home before dark." That was pretty much how I was raised. I didn't have any real boundaries. The desert was my playground, the Mojave Desert. Anyway, the day came, and I rode to the girl's house. It's about 2 miles, and it was rough. The wind was blowing like crazy. I was riding against a headwind, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, I think the party was like 3 o'clock, and what would transpire later is their mother would end up or volunteered to take me home. I think it was getting dark and something, and that ended up with, when upon meeting my mother, the 2 moms, they instantly became friends, and that's a whole other story of crazy things they got into. But again, we won't go there. Well, as I remember, the older sister did like me, but I felt for the younger sister. And so it was then that we hung out with her, most often. We promised each other that we would get married someday. This is like 1967. 1967. Childhood, puppy love, call it what you wish. Now, I lost track of her, everything. In 1968, The family was split. The girls, two girls, they were taken, if that's the right word, but they were taken by the state, removed from the household, and they became wards of the state. And that's due to some very awful things that went on that were discovered by their father. And again, that's a topic we won't discuss here on this channel. So, other than hearing about the young girl through her grandmother, which, of course, when I say we, my mom and, for the most part, my dad, stayed friends with all the way, well, into the many, many, many later years. I got to see the young lady, the young girl, in 1971, and we're talking about 3 years past. She was visiting her grandmother's, and by then I was playing the guitar, and I got to play for her. I played, I believe it was called This Land Is My Land, and that was a treat, if I must say. Anyway, that was 71, and then her and of course her sister, again wards of the state, they returned to the girls' school, which was in Santa Barbara, California, a long ways away from. I lived in Apple Valley, California, so I did not get to see her again until 1976. Now, by then I was in the military. I was in the U.S. Air Force. I was on my way to my first assignment, which was in Syracuse, New York. I mentioned that. And so I took it upon myself. I did have permission from her grandmother, an actual written letter, to see the girl. So I traveled to Santa Barbara on the train. I was in my full dress blues, and let me tell you, those are heavy, or were, and I walked from the train station, and I think it might have been Amtrak. I think it was there. Yeah, it was Amtrak in 76. And I walked from the train station to the convent, the girls' school, the Catholic school where she was. It was about 4 miles. It was 107 degrees. Could I have taken a taxi? Well, yeah. There might have been other ways, but anyway, I walked. And boy, yeah, sweaty, hot, tired. But regardless, I went to the school and I presented my letter in the best manners that I could present, and I was flatly refused to be allowed to see her. Well, part of me, I will cause a commotion, and I will put up a fuss, if you will. And I did. You call her grandmother. This is the letter. She gave me permission. Darn it. I'm not sure if they called her. I think they did. Anyway, I was granted permission, if you will. 14 minutes. The girl was brought in through a set of double doors. Apparently she had just been swimming or practicing. Now she was in I think it was called the Special Olympics, and she was a medal winner, first, second place medals for the Special Olympics. And then she also had some awards in horse training, horse carrying, which they had on the school. But anyway, she was, we both were seated and everything, watched like a hawk 4 nuns. She was scared out of her mind. And I could tell. She barely speak. Barely. She would look at the nuns. So I knew there was a lot of control there. And a lot of influence. And that was sad because I didn't come from that environment. But again, she was a ward of the state, and I guess that's just what they had to do, was they had to be strict. But be as it may, I did get to see her, and that was in 1976. And again, I went on, spent the night, got on the train, and of course I was off to New York, cross-country trip. I tried to write her. I was encouraged by her grandmother to write to her, and the letters never were answered. I would later learn that the nun who oversaw her den, I think it was called, or I don't know, wherever they lived, right, in the dormitory. She had kept them all. Later she actually did give them to us. This is way after the fact. 1980, January 1980, I get a letter about about 2 o'clock. I was living in what was called Beatty, Nevada. I was still in the Air Force, and I was serving out on one of the training ranges. So I chose to stay in the small town where I was like the public liaison and stuff. Had to get Beatty, very, very small town, but my favorite. Not a whole lot to do, but that's me. And like most, I had a routine. If I wasn't working, if you want to call it the military work, which I was. I worked 5 days a week and went to the range at 7 in the morning and got off at 5. Anyway, I went to the mailbox, to the post office on Saturday, probably about 9 or 10. Nothing. Not that I was expecting anything. Well, I went back downtown, so I lived about a mile out. Walked back downtown to grab supper, and something told me, stop by the mailbox again. Of course, obviously, the boxes were open 24/7. But I stopped in around 2, and again, there was nothing in the box. But the door opened. It was one of these double doors that would separate top and bottom. The postmaster, a lady, can't remember her name now, but she says, "This is for you." It was a letter from this girl. Now, I hadn't seen her since 1976. She was living in Hinckley, I believe it was, Minnesota. Well, the letter was short, but it basically read, "Dear Fred, I think of you often, but please do not respond to this, as I am in a relationship with Tim, and we may get married someday, but I just wanted to let you know that I still care for you." And she signed it. Heartbroken? Partly. Did I write back? Well, of course I did. That's just what I do. I wrote back. It took me a couple days to pen something and everything. I partly poured my heart out, but I tried to be respectful. I wasn't on my knees begging. Well, maybe I had a little bit of language in there. But I do recall saying, well, good. I didn't really mean that, deep down, right? But congratulations. I hope you and Tim the best. 4 days later, oh wait, I did put in that letter, at the end I said, if there's anything you ever want or need, let me know. This includes phone calls collect, even a bus ticket back to California, if necessary. 4 days later, she called me. I think I was walking, I think I just got off work and I was walking back up to my house. And she calls me and says, I am at my grandmother's in California. Can you come see me? 1980. Well, I don't think I have to tell any of you the outcome of that. I got my best friend, who happened to live in Las Vegas, 212 miles away, and I said, do you want to take a trip to Disneyland? He says, are you serious? I said, I'm paying for everything. Yeah. So by, I don't know, mid-afternoon, he was picking me up, and we were on our way down, and I told him the story, and so we stopped to visit, and of course I say I got my first kiss there in front of her grandparents and her brother, but her grandma was expecting, because they knew how we felt and stuff. Stayed a few hours, kind of late, but of course my best friend, who would be my best man, says, you promised me a trip to Disneyland. Well, we never did get there. We got about part way, and I don't know, we turned around and headed home or something, back to Vegas. Did some gambling, and we spent just the weekend, Sunday and a little bit of Monday and stuff, because I didn't have to go to work till noon that following Monday. Well, the following Wednesday, oh yes, I did. I had paid for that ticket from Minnesota to California. Then I ended up paying for the ticket. That sounded like I was obligated. I wasn't. I freely provided a ticket for this young lady to come to Las Vegas. And I met her at the Greyhound bus station. And I believe that was February, the first part of February. I think she stayed at her grandmother's for a couple of weeks. Well, by March, we were planning the wedding. And then in April of that year, 1981, that childhood promise did come true. We got married. And my friend was my best man. The girl's brother walked her down the aisle. Of course, her grandmother and my mom and friends, they were all there. So that sets the tone of the story. Childhood promise of two kids separated 13 years and getting back together and moving on. So In July of 1977, with that pencil in hand, I started just writing. And I think it's all on the computer now. I do have the original manuscript someplace. I can't really say if I have it in still in hard copy. If I do, it's probably faded, right? I'm looking here at the computer for a moment. And I thought, anyway, okay. I'm going to back out of this for a moment because the page is a little bit not reading right. Oh, that's just the way it is. Okay, I don't remember. So I started writing, and I just wrote every night, every day, every moment that I could. I wrote this story. My character, one of the main characters, and of course I use my name, Fred. And I believe I did use the girl's name. I'm looking here. Anyway, okay. I used the girl's grandparents. And by the way, the girl is named Paula. Pardon me, it's a little hard. I don't speak her name too much. Again, how we ended things now 15 years ago. But we have to move on, right? And of course, I've moved on, as most of you know. I love Star with all my heart. And maybe that's why I don't mention the previous marriage or the ex-wife. Hard to say, right? But anyway, we'll move on. So the story turned out to be a Western, if you didn't guess already. It turned out to be a Western romance. And okay, so I'm going to try to turn the camera here. Now I may not be able to see this, so I'm going to stand because I haven't quite figured out how to get, blend these together. So let's see if we can get that. If you can see that, I will try to hold this thing still. But this was the original cover, the original drawing from 1977. And you can see the title there. It's called The Vows and the Guns. And it would go on with, of course, V&G and the ranch, that the fictional ranch, and then this pendant here. And this was the girl's initials, PML, which is which becomes a center part of the story. But that was going to be my cover. And in the original story, I have the vows, a pledge to give, to observe, to surrender through earnest dedication of oneself, to do upon the other a personal commitment always. And the guns, for whatever reason, picture don't want to come up. The story by my pen name, which is Alaskan Wolf. And I'm actually reading from the 2011 final draft, the final manuscript, before this went to print or went in to be published. So The Vows and the Guns. Here's a little bit about it on the back of the story. Fred, an, an orphan son whose parents were killed in a massacre, was taken in as a young kid 16 years ago by the family that owned the largest ranch in the territory, which happened to be the Wyoming territory. There's a lot of backdrop to how that became. He became the stepbrother of the natural son, Steve. I base him, the character, from my own brother. Now, mostly build, characteristics, hair, eyes, and everything. Nothing to do with the character in here, because my brother wasn't like that. My brother was a very good man. Very good man. Steve, assuming that he will inherit the ranch, murders his father, but accuses Fred of killing him. Steve tells Fred, "This doesn't belong to you. Just leave, or else." Fred leaves. He just packs up and says, "Fine, you know what? I don't want no confrontations, any violence." And in real life, that is me. As I mentioned, I was bullied a lot in my days, but I would walk away if I could. And most of the time I did. I'm just not a fighter. I probably wouldn't have won anyway. But there was only one time, and it was in 7th grade, that I was, provoked as usual. And something did snap in me when the dude closed the locker on me, and I turned with a fist, and I smacked him crazy. I probably would have been beaten like nothing if it wouldn't have been for the art teacher coming out and pouring her wrath out. But that's another story. But as far as the story is concerned, I just left. Okay? Now, keep in mind, the backdrop of this is, of course, I would find the girl later, as I mentioned in real life. Anyway, Fred goes away for the discovery of the will that then his stepfather left, to seek a new life and to search for the little girl that he had promised to marry when they were both small children. Yet Steve, to his dismay, he finds in his father's will that the ranch was being left to both of them. Well, of course, because later on, Steve was the one that took his father's life, their father's life in the story. Didn't happen in real life. Fred becomes wanted for murder. Okay? Wanted posters, so on and so forth. Because the whole idea is Steve figures, because everything belongs to him. And if the young stepbrother is out of the way, or can't be found, why not, right? He gets the largest ranch in Wyoming, and in those days, of course, would have been a fortune. So, of course, unknowing at first to Fred, he is wanted, not only by the law, but after the failure of, I call the 2 baboons that Steve had hired, they fail to do their jobs. And I was going to use the 2 characters as like the well, baboons, the laugh track, the what word am I looking for? The comedy team. But I found that it was just too much trying to write in a Western style to the best that I had learned, and of course that's probably a lot of Hollywood stuff that I took, and so I did do away with those two characters early on in the story. So, but upon finding out this, Steve himself decides, okay, he's going to take it upon himself to come looking for me, for his stepbrother. And of course, so the story goes on with he's chasing me, the law's chasing me, stuff. And in here, I have, of course, I have contents, and I have then the dedication to the first wife, and I put in here some acknowledgments. One, of course, is to my Aunt Money, my Aunt Mildred, as I have mentioned before. I have a dedication here to my advisor, to Chris Exline, when I went back to the university. And then I have here a dedication to my last supervisor when I was working for the California Department of Transportation in the 2000s. And we call Caltrans. And she was very supportive, in fact, very supportive before she became my last supervisor, before I retired. So I have a dedication in for her. And I think I may come back and read to set the story, and these are some of the changes I made later on before the book went to the publication in January of 2012. I have what's called here a beginning, and it's the Wyoming Territory, July 23rd, 1856, all fictional. So I set the story for that massacre that the back of the book mentions, and of course the characters basically introducing not only the young girl, but her mother and her grandmother, because they are part of the story, central part, just as they were in real life. As well, I need to go back here, I forgot. It's been a long time since I opened this, July 23rd. So then I put in here to introduce the other side of the story, where my character, you recall, became the stepson. The discovery, July 24th, 1856, the following afternoon, I introduce who would become my stepfather. And this character is written after my real stepfather, of whom obviously I adored. I never knew my real father, that for many reasons that my mom kept me from. But my stepfather, of whom I use in many of my short stories today, much different. But even though my mom, for whatever reason, despised him, and he had his flaws, okay? He had, some things, but he taught me a lot. That mostly his work ethic, one that could hold up to 3 jobs. He'd go to every one of them, sometimes all in the same day, often walking to each one. They're very, very dedicated man. And I stayed in touch with him right up to almost his final days, which I believe was, I think he passed on around 2011. But that's another story. Anyway, so I may read those 2 parts, which sets the story. And then, of course, then after that, the story starts the 16 years later, part 1, which is Tuesday, September 24th, 1872. And while this is all fictional, I did use the real date calendars back then. So this was my first book, a Western romance, that, as I mentioned, I started in 1977. I did not, I guess if you want to use this draft here that I have in front of me, the final draft, I did not finish it until 2011, the fall of 2011, when I finally found a publisher who worked out of his home, and we spent countless hours going through the many drafts, proofreading, moving things around, and in hopes of getting the story the best possible. Now, there were a few things that he missed, a few things I missed, but when the book goes on out and it was published, well, it's kind of late to everything. So, I'm not trying to, spin my yarn here. If it sounds that way, I'm trying to be humble, if you will. But recall the earlier drawing? Well, that was the drawing in 1977. This was the final cover that I designed. And of course, it was sent out to be done. Those days we didn't have AI and everything. But that is the final cover of the Vows and the Guns. The 3 guns, of course, have particular meaning. Basically, later on, they were added for my 3 boys and stuff. And then, of course, you see kind of the ranch. And then, of course, my character, the girl's character, would have been that first kiss that I mentioned to you, her grandmother's. But it's the only book that I have published so far. I have so many stories. But I was reading on the back of it, right there. If you are interested in this, this is available on Amazon. And it's in softcover and stuff. And it's also available on ebook. The ebook, I think, is only like $3 or something. This, I think, still goes for about $15 and everything. This is the last, I believe. Trying to look here. Oh, yes. I will end this video with just a quick story, and then I'm going to start another one and give you a little bit more about where I am today with some of the writing, the project I have in front of me. But this is the last hard copy, well, published copy I have. And I think I mentioned the story. Now, I met Star online. The place called Yearbook. And it was, as I remember, you would look at a bunch of pictures, primarily of women, if you picked that up with the thing, or men, if that was your, you were looking for, whatever gender you identify with. No judgment. Okay? So I was looking at all the women, and you're supposed to choose 6 or 8 of them. And if they respond back, hi, how are you? Hello. It may start a conversation, it may not. And yeah, I don't know how many I picked. But the idea was the more you picked, the more points you would receive. It was called lunch money. And, this fake stuff, very much like Monopoly money in a way, right? And the more that you earned, the more you clicked, I guess it was, the more you earned, then you could take that fictional money and you could use it to donate to online sponsors. Everything from the Red Cross to charities. You could buy dog food, cat food, you name it. You could donate this. And as far as I know, as you donated it, then of course the sponsors would then turn and buy the equivalent value of that product or service and use it out in the world. At least it sounded good, right? And then I hope it was. But that's beside the point. Well, I stayed with that site for a few weeks. Didn't really get too many bites, if you will. But I was about ready to leave the site. I was like bored, disappointed, whatever one wants to call it. But I thought, why not? One more shot, right? Well, among the last dozen or so that I clicked on, Star was one of them. And she clicked back and we began talking. And we hit it off right away. We talked about our hobbies and what we did. In part, she fostered dogs. I was fostering a dog at the time, so we met that. We talked about soulmates and whether or not we may have existed in another time. And we clicked on that, because we do believe that we are soulmates and stuff, as well as reading. Now she said, well, I'm not a very good writer. She actually is. But I shared my writing like I just did you. Now this book was just coming out. I had probably just got the first shipment, maybe the first draft. Well, Star says, I would like to get a copy. Will you send me one? Sure. Well, by then we were pretty much a niche. We knew that we were going to be together. Well, what do? I charge her for the book. Can you believe that? Oh, she sent me the money and everything. And I felt like a heel. I felt guilty that my girlfriend, online only, right? And very, very possible fiance, we were that far along because we had talked marriage and everything. But I charged her. You don't do that. Well, maybe you do. Well, in this book, of course, like many of my early ones, I did sign it, personally sign it. And I had put in here my nearest, and I'll change the wording here, my dearest morning star. A smile becomes me when I think of January, our new beginning. I am proud to share all that I have. Hugs, kisses, your wolf. My name, February 1st, 2012. I sent her the book. And then, of course, I refunded her money not long after that. She got a laugh out of that and stuff. She read the book, and she picked up, which I didn't pick up, but as I was coming to a final, when we were coming to the final draft of this, the publisher and I, who also was my proofreader, I made some slight changes, tried to stay with the original, but up here, and I recall writing throughout the entire story from 1977 on, I did include myself, in this fictional household. Myself, Steve, as I mentioned, the older brother, and his sister, my stepsister. I believe her name was Carol, that I used. And at first I was going to use my daughter, which was named Jennifer, but she's buried in here. I mean, I don't drill, on the memory, but she was only with us for a few hours before she passed on right in my arms. But again, that's just what sometimes happens. But anyway, that's beside the point. But using the name back then, Jennifer, did feel painful. So I did change her name to Carol. Not sure why I came up with that. Oh wait, take that back. Carolyn. Pardon me, Carolyn. Well, the moral of that part of the story is Carolyn was mentioned through the book, and I introduced kind of a possible love interest there between Carolyn and Fred. Now, they're step siblings, so some of you may consider that bad, taboo. Nothing in this story speaks of any shenanigans, that went on. I tried my best, as I do today. I try to keep all my stories on a G level, maybe a PG, I think, if you want to use a movie rating. I'm not sure what they use in books, but I keep them clean, okay? If I do put any relations in there, they're very, very mild and stuff. But that's another story. Anyway, Carolyn popped up in the final draft several times. As I'm traveling, as I was leaving home, if you will, in the story, camping out under the stars and stuff. And so my character brings up this Carolyn of the suggested caring, suggested love interest. Maybe that's not the word, caring, because in my heart, I was in love with this girl that I had met, as I mentioned, as a child. Well, interestingly, after Star read the book, she says, Fred, that other woman, that third female, you mentioned a lot about her. Did you ever wonder if perhaps that I was that character, that girl, that lady? Because we talked about being soulmates, and we talked about, we thought we might have known each other in another time. And we both believed that the spirits talked to us, that the spirits brought us together. As I think I mentioned to you, as you can see right here, that my 1977, my native name, which is Alaskan Wolf, and her First Nations name. So I get that right there, somewhere if I can see it, is Morningstar. Might be hard to read that. And of course, later, much later in 2012, when Star and I would actually, met online and talk, continued to talk online. The spirits were talking to us, and in both of our dreams, separate. I was still in California. She was in Canada, a few thousand miles away. For he is Alaskan Wolf. She is Morningstar. As two river flows, they become one. For you shall be Mrs. and Mr. Wolfstar. Latter part of my native name. The last part of her name. Wolfstar, which today is in my real name as a legal entity. Just before, of course, I kept my last name as well. Anyway, but that's that part. But back to the premise. Star believed that all along, back here perhaps in my subconscious, I knew that she someday would be in my life. Someday, of course, did come true in 2012, when we then would meet in New Mexico a couple months later in April of 2012. We met in person in the Circle of Enchantment, which is an actual highway up in northern New Mexico. And we had our native ceremony, marriage ceremony, just outside of Eagle's Nest in April 28th of that year. And then it wouldn't be until June of 2014, when I would finally move to Canada, that we got married with all the proper stuff, for the government. We call Paper Day, and I may have mentioned that before, but getting the license and all that, and that ceremony was held at her parents' house in Morris, Manitoba. And that year, ironically, became known as Pure Love 42. This was the year that of her birth years, 42. Ironically, June 22nd, 2014, if you take the numbers, 6, 14, 22, it equals 42. Coincidence? Maybe. Of course, we would go on later and we would have, we call our celebration in September of the same year, the 23rd, where she would be walked down the aisle by her father, meeting me with my best man, which was my oldest son. There's pictures on my website, on the Facebook site, if you ever want to see those pictures. Maybe you have. Stuff. It was 11 years ago. Coming up to 12, obviously, soon. Well, next year. But anyway, okay. I'm getting off topic again. So that's a little bit about my early writing career. I thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of ramble and rolling. And I will be back with another part of my writing style, if I can even bring it up. So for now, may you have a wonderful day or evening or wherever you are in the world. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.